Hello everyone and welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. On November 20th, China, Tanzania and Zambia jointly held a groundbreaking ceremony for the Tazara Railway revitalization project in Lusaka, the capital of Zambia. This railway, which carries the memories of China-Africa friendship and development, has officially begun its modernization upgrade. The Tazara Railway is a classic example of China's assistance to developing countries, built at a time when China itself was still poor and facing economic difficulties. In 1976, after 6 years of Chinese assistance, the Tazara Railway was completed and opened. At its peak, annual transport capacity reached 1.227 million tons. However, due to aging equipment and neglect, its performance now lags far behind highways, with current capacity at only 200,000 tons per year. Professor Chen Xiaochen, author of Seeking a Path in Africa, Chinese Memories on the Railway, and current Deputy Director of the Institute of Country and Regional Studies at the School of Foreign Languages, East China Normal University, pointed out in an interview with Mainland Observer that 50 years ago, this railway served as a secret political channel that helped Zambia break through the blockade of apartheid. Now, according to the agreement, once the Tazara Railway is reactivated, its annual freight volume will reach 2.4 million tons. This railway will be transformed into an economic opportunity corridor focused on the export of copper, as well as key minerals such as cobalt, nickel, and lithium to meet global energy transition demands. Chen Xiaochen breaks down the opportunities brought by this transformation into 3 dimensions. In the short term, it can leverage the current high copper prices to facilitate the export channels for Africa's key minerals. In the long term, it can promote Chinese-style modernization, deeply integrate China's new quality productive forces with Africa's modernization, and unlock the development potential of African countries. On the political level, it revitalizes the spiritual legacy forged by the elder generation of leaders from China, Tanzania, and Zambia in the new era, giving it renewed vitality and far-reaching strategic value. At the groundbreaking ceremony, Premier Li Qiang said China will assist Zambia and Tanzania in developing and prospering the Tazara Railway to create an economic hub. China will enhance cooperation and implement impactful projects in healthcare poverty alleviation and public welfare to improve people's livelihoods. In Chen Xiaochen's view, one of the key breakthroughs of the project lies in activating the hub function of Kapiriamposhi, a small town in Zambia that serves as the terminus of the Tazara Railway. This initiative will inject new momentum into the logistics landscape of Southern Africa and China-Africa cooperation. As the terminus of the Tazara Railway, Kapiriamposhi is located in Zambia's central province. To the north, it connects directly to the core mining area of the Copperbelt province. 200 kilometers to the south lies the capital, Lusaka, with further extension possible to South Africa. To the east, it provides access to Tanzania's port of Dar es Salaam. The Tazara Railway renovation has been included as a key project for regional connectivity under the Belt and Road Initiative. In the future, it will form a 3-pronged logistics pattern alongside the Lobito Corridor, supported by the US and Europe, and the Nacala Corridor proposed by Japan. Regarding China's role in this, Chen Xiaochen made it clear that China's primary task remains that of a builder, while also focusing on coordinating the rules of the tripartite operational mechanism among China, Tanzania, and Zambia, as well as ensuring the seamless connection between the Tazara Railway and Zambia's national railway. For now, there is no need to get involved in coordinating with the other 2 corridors. The core focus is to concentrate efforts on successfully implementing and constructing the project itself. Only after improving the efficiency and value of mineral exports can the issue of competition among the 3 routes be discussed. In summary, while the launch of the Tazara Railway upgrade is indeed related to geopolitical considerations involving the United States, China's focus is not on confronting the US, but rather on doing its own work well and becoming stronger. When this railway can serve the function of transporting mineral resources to the port, it will naturally have economic value. China will also have a stable supply of key minerals such as copper. If a project is built solely for the sake of confrontation, it will still end up unfinished or abandoned. China's foreign aid and cooperation will never take that path. Projects that cannot benefit local residents have no future. Western media can be said to be both envious and worried about China's overseas initiatives. Whenever they see China making progress, they tend to hype up the so-called China threat. On the 28th, Bloomberg released a short documentary that uses Peru's Chanquay port as an entry point, focusing on China's global port strategy. The report states that over the past 20 years, China has invested hundreds of billions of dollars to build or invest in a global commercial port network on every continent except Antarctica. With shipping hubs spread across 6 continents, China has already consolidated its dominance in trade. Especially against the backdrop of the trade war initiated by US President Trump and rising global trade tensions, this network has become an increasingly prominent strategic advantage for China. While the United States is pulling back on overseas investments, China is accelerating its related initiatives. Chinese state-owned enterprises or official entities have invested more than $6 billion in 129 overseas port projects, spanning countries such as Tanzania, Australia, Nigeria, Cambodia, and many others. The sheer scale of their investments makes similar efforts by other countries pale in comparison. However, the report then shifts its tone, with Bloomberg reviving concerns that some ports could potentially be used by China for military purposes, which is causing worry in many countries. In fact, on August 13th of this year, Bloomberg had already asked the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs about this issue, saying that some US officials and analysts claim that Chinese companies are building a global network of ports to control global trade, conduct espionage, and facilitate overseas missions for the Chinese military. They wanted to know China's view on this matter. At that time, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian made it clear that such remarks are nothing but anxiety-mongering. He expressed hope that the US would stop overstretching the concept of security, stop hyping up the so-called China threat, and stop interfering with China's normal foreign economic and trade cooperation. However, from this Bloomberg program, we can still see how China is laying out its port network to help it become the world's largest trading nation. In this micro-documentary, Bloomberg cites expert opinions stating that 6 of the world's 10 busiest ports are located in China, and that 95% of China's trade relies on maritime transport. By opening up overseas markets for manufactured goods and importing raw materials for domestic processing, China has achieved economic development. Therefore, securing access to the global port network is a core strategy for China. In addition, as the world's largest manufacturer of container ships, China has come to dominate the construction of global trade infrastructure through these cross-generational investments, which is precisely a core pillar of the Belt and Road Initiative. This also means that, in addition to reviving the ancient Silk Road through highways and railways, China must also ensure the security and smooth operation of its maritime import and export routes. Zoe, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, says that since the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese entities have been accelerating their investments in overseas ports, both in scale and in number, while the US government currently has no initiatives to provide funding or construction support for overseas port projects. Peter Martin, a reporter from Bloomberg, echoed this sentiment, saying that China possesses a complete industrial ecosystem, including companies specializing in port construction, such as those in the cement and steel industries, sectors that have not been a focus for the United States in recent years. From here, the documentary begins to amplify the sense of threat, claiming that after World War II, the United States maintained a vast network of military bases around the world. Now, as the US is becoming increasingly anxious about growing domestic political instability and is pulling back, China is seizing the opportunity to fill the void. Bloomberg reports that among the ports invested in by Chinese capital, 17 are majority owned by Chinese companies. This allows China to give priority docking rights to certain countries' ships or to refuse entry to vessels from other nations. Martin says that, for example, several Trump administration officials have suggested that even shallow water ports could potentially serve dual civilian and military purposes. However, both the Peruvian and Chinese sides have strongly denied this. The documentary further states that a more immediate concern for the US government is that China might use these ports as leverage during trade tensions. The article then goes on to mention the disputes this year between China and the United States over ports at the Panama Canal. Martin says that the Panama Canal is a vital economic lifeline for the United States, with 5% of global trade and 40% of US container shipping passing through this canal. If it becomes impossible to navigate freely between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans via this route, US trade would be severely threatened. Although the entire article plays up the China threat narrative, Bloomberg also has to admit that many countries receiving Chinese-funded port construction or investment actually welcome this attention and capital. Bloomberg reporter Mu Hualeke mentioned that U.S. officials have criticized Peru's construction projects and even threatened Peruvian authorities to ban large-scale investments by Chinese companies. Peruvian officials, however, countered that the United States has never shown any willingness to make such massive investments in Peru. Martin also frankly admitted that if you talk to officials from countries like Nigeria or Peru, you'll find that they generally believe we need this infrastructure, it's crucial for our economic modernization plans. And China is currently the only country willing to provide these. MainlandObserver.com pointed out that from Darwin Port in Australia to Chanque Port in Peru, from the Panama Canal to today's port of Piraeus, the United States constantly politicizes commercial cooperation, repeatedly exposing its sour grapes mentality toward Chinese-funded port collaborations and its habitual hegemonism. Such unscrupulous tactics, competing with China and inciting confrontation everywhere, have already triggered growing discontent. Former Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis previously criticized that the various actions the United States takes to contain China are essentially aimed at maintaining its global financial dominance. He incisively analyzed that American hegemony relies on its monopoly over international dollar-denominated payments, which is why the United States can make the world pay for its deficits. To sum up a few observations. First, as reported by Bloomberg, China does indeed have a large-scale presence in overseas port development, but these efforts are in response to increased trade demand and are undertaken from a perspective that benefits both parties. Second, in many cases, it was because foreign companies were unable to continue operations that Chinese enterprises brought in capital, upgraded facilities, and turned losses into profits. Third, the current concerns of the United States stem from viewing the world from its own perspective, believing that Chinese investment in ports is intended to allow Chinese warships to dock. In reality, China does not act like the United States by stirring up conflicts around the globe. Chinese companies invest mainly to strengthen their economic competitiveness. If you really want to talk about a China threat, it's that Chinese companies are truly formidable competitors in the market.